a lot of times we wait to feel confident before we go after the thing. But in reality, that confidence is built by taking the steps and actually taking the action and mastering the thing. Then you gain the confidence. So it's like being able to take that step that's a little out of your comfort zone and going, oh, I'm gonna sign up for this thing. And then you start taking the action. That's where you build your confidence.
Good morning and welcome back to You Need a Counselor. My name is Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder of Heart and Solutions. We are a counseling agency here in Iowa. We are offering outpatient mental health counseling services as well as in-home behavioral health intervention sessions. We're also doing telehealth sessions still on the computer and over the phone. So if you don't want to have to leave your house or if you don't want to see anybody in person, that's totally fine. I get that. So definitely go ahead and give us a call because we can meet with you for counseling over the phone or over the computer, whatever you're most comfortable with.
And I'm Chrissa Brown, and I am the vice president at Heart and Solutions, and I am in charge of our behavioral health department that Julie was talking about. So we go in-home, in school, or can do telehealth right now as well with children ages 4 to 18 and work on different behavioral skills. And this is our podcast. So we are You Need a Counselor, and we are designed for people curious about counseling but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Yeah, so we post on Sunday nights. So mark your calendar for Sunday nights. If it's a weekday and you're thinking about doing laundry, don't put that laundry away on a Tuesday night. That is a waste of a Tuesday night. Go ahead and save that up. This is your permission slip to not put away laundry until Sunday night. You're going to start your entire week off with clean laundry. And it gives you that entire week after you listen to the episode to go ahead and get on the phone, call a counselor, message us. We'll get you set up no matter what state you're in. We will give you a list of counselors in your area. So reach out to us. That gives you that entire week. Or if you haven't seen your counselor in a while, that gives you a week to call your counselor and get scheduled to get started. So we are very excited today. We've got a special guest today. We've got Dr. Kerry Petsinger. Welcome, Kerry.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to brag on Kerry a little bit. So Kerry has her doctorate in physical therapy, but right now she is a high performance coach. She hosts a program called Mornings That Matter, which lights up my brain. So I'm very excited to hear about Mornings That Matter. But Kerry is international. And so Kerry provides services in over 70 different countries, allowing people to just take kind of what we do, right? Like take away the barriers that are keeping people from living their best life and from reaching those goals that might seem out of reach. Kerry is a performance coach that will help you kind of identify those barriers and how to push through them and achieve the life that you deserve, that you want. So welcome, Kerry. You got to tell me about Mornings That Matter because I did not grow up being a morning person, but I have evolved into a morning person, I think. And so just the title of that kind of gets me. So what is that?
Awesome. So Mornings That Matter is my research-based 10-minute morning mindset routine to start every day feeling unstoppable. And it's something that I created when I was a mom to 3 little kids within 19 months. And it was like, you know what? I want to reach big goals with my work and I want to be super present and fulfilled at home. And I want to figure out how to have my version of having it all. And I started studying all these world-class peak performers and started realizing that one consistent thing that every single person I studied, one consistent thing they had was they all had a very, very specific morning routine that they would do. And their morning routine from person to person was very different or took a different length of time or had different habits. But I said, you know what, I've got to create something that helps me start the day feeling super focused and intentional and unstoppable. So I tested a bunch of different things and dove into the habits and the psychology and the physiology of all these different routines and habits and tested them out and tweaked them and adjusted them and ended up coming up with this 10-minute routine that changed my life. And now I teach it to people from all over.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about kind of like the research, because I think that part of our brain, even though there's a huge part of our brain that does not want to do things in the morning, there's also part of our brain that understands this idea, right? That kind of just naturally goes, yeah, that makes sense in theory. And, you know, having your doctorate and going through that research process and then using that to research this idea, tell us kind of about what the research says about the importance of these morning routines.
So as far as morning routines, like no matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, and where you want to go, when you set off to become a better version of you, right, you have to do things differently. So either we need to do different actions than we've done in the past, or we need to show up at a whole new level. And either of those options require us to come out of our comfort zone, right? And when we do that, when we're going to try to grow and come out of our comfort zone, our brain is going to say, whoa, no. We don't do this. This isn't our normal habit. We don't show up like this. This isn't what we do. This must be dangerous. This must be scary. Let's go back to where it's safe, right? So our own brains try to put the brakes on ourselves from really building our best lives. So what we want to do is have a morning routine that helps you start the day feeling focused and feeling like you can conquer those mental obstacles that hold you back from building your best life. Like one of the things that I always say is that our actions aren't bigger than our thoughts. So for example, if I tell you that my dream is to run a marathon, but deep down I think, yeah, right. Like I'm not a runner. Like I haven't worked out since third grade phy ed, and there's no way. Like I don't have what it takes. Like I'd love to, but I don't have what it takes. And even if I work hard for a long time, there's no way. Guess what? I'm going to show up not like a marathon runner, right? If I deep down believe that the farthest I could ever go in life is 2 miles, I'm going to show up every day and practice like a 2-mile runner. I'm going to strength train like a 2-mile runner. I'm going to run like a 2-mile runner. I'm going to show up on race day like a 2-mile runner, not 26.2. And the same thing happens with every area of our life, right? So if I say, oh, I'd love to grow my business to whatever, but yeah, right, I'm not going to show up and take the action to try to get there, because why would I, right? Same thing where if it's like, oh, I'd love to, you know, revive and rejuvenate my marriage, but yeah, right. Guess what? I'm not going to show up as the person who's going to take the action to do that. Or hey, I'd love to be a better parent. Yeah, right. I don't have what it takes, right? So no matter what it is. So this morning routine, I'm really big on starting the day feeling intentional, feeling focused, feeling purpose driven, and feeling like, hey, I've got what it takes. I've got the mental skill set to overcome those things that are holding me back, and to be able to actually think big and believe things are possible and be open to the possibilities and the opportunities instead of just seeing barriers and roadblocks.
Yeah. I love that. I think those habits are just so important, that those habits be aligned with those bigger goals. And
Yes.
when it's in the morning, it's like, man, those things that I want to get done in the day, if there are certain things that if I don't do them in the morning, I'm not doing them. Like, it's like I need to trick my brain into doing that thing before I can argue with it. Like before my brain actually wakes. Yeah, like, okay, wait a minute. Before you actually wake up, like just go work out. Like before you actually wake up, go do homework, which sounds odd, but I'm like half asleep doing homework, right? But it's before that part, that yeah, right part of my brain wakes up and is conscious of what's happening. I stumble down the stairs at 5 a.m. and I go, okay, what's the first thing to do? Put water on for tea. Like, okay, I can do that, you know, even though I'm half asleep. And I love those, that idea that, you know, those habits, those actions are just reinforcing to ourselves that, yeah, those things are possible, because I'm able to every day, I have a small win towards that goal. I love your example of the marathon running. Chrissa and I actually have a history here where we, when I met Chrissa, I there's a half marathon that I was running every year at that time. And Chrissa was like, I would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, Chrissa was like, yeah, right. Like, I never would be able. This was like, what, 9 years ago? And now Chrissa runs that thing every single year and beats my time every year, right? Like, it's that idea of as soon as it was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I walked the first one. Oh, now I'm a person who can finish a half marathon walking, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I jogged the second one. Oh, now I'm a person who can finish it under 3 hours, right? And like it increases who we believe that we are, which then allows us to do those actions every day towards that, right? And sometimes those actions are like, well, yeah, I want to run is training for a marathon, but sometimes those actions are like, I need to look up the date of when it is.
Yeah,
like I need to write that on my calendar of when it is. Just even those little things, what you said about the rights, I love that. That's going to stick with me because those things that's what stops us from even looking up what the date is of that marathon. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And like you said, when you can break it down in increments and be like, wow, now I walked it, or now I got it on like my calendar. There's the date of it. Okay, now I'm gonna start training. I'm gonna start walking. Wow, I did that. Now I believe I can start like walk, jog, and then you do that, and then you're like, wow, I did it, and you build your confidence and momentum as you take the action to get to where you want to go. And that's one thing I think is so important. Is a lot of times we wait to feel confident before we go after the thing. But in reality, that confidence is built by taking the steps and actually taking the action and mastering the thing. Then you gain the confidence. So it's like being able to take that step that's a little out of your comfort zone and going, oh, I'm gonna sign up for this thing. And then you start taking the action. That's where you build your confidence. And one of the things I love that you were talking about is in the morning, like right away doing that thing that maybe it's something hard or something that, even before you're awake and your brain starts thinking about it. There was a Mark Twain quote, and he said, eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and chances are nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. So that's one thing I actually love to do in my morning routine is before I go to bed, like I actually on my planner, it says what's the frog for the next day and what time am I going to eat it. And that frog, it's like, I like to do it right away in the morning. It's like, what's the thing you just want to procrastinate or you're a little bit scared of, or, it's something that though, that if you just take that one little step, it's going to get you closer to being the best version of you. If you can do that in the morning, then you don't worry about it all day, or you don't think about it. It doesn't take up a whole bunch of your, mental space. You get it done, you do it, and then you start your day like, hey, I accomplished this thing. Like, that's awesome. So that I love that concept of like eating the frog, do the thing right away in the morning, and then move on.
That's great. And I love that, so it sounds like your program really gives a structure to the morning. So I think mornings have a tendency to be very kind of like feel like floating free space. And I love floating free space, but I want that after work. I want in the morning, I want to have kind of those things where I can go, yeah, these are the things that I'm doing. And kind of, this is the order that I'm pre-planning to do them in. Because otherwise, if I let that free space happen, then I don't have that free space in the evening because I'm scrambling to do all of the things that I wanted to do for that day. So giving a structure is great.
Yes. And it's quick, it's powerful, it's effective. It just gets you, started off being really intentional with that structure.
When we were talking about counseling, what you're talking about is so important in counseling too. I mean, gosh, we identify these habits, and these habits that are sometimes they seem like non-habits, right? Like I'm in the habit of not meal prepping, or I'm in the habit of not going to sleep at 9 o'clock, right? Like we still have habits, even though we think about like creating habits. But I think what you're talking about is identifying the fact that we already have the habit. We need to replace the habit with the habit that is going to bring us towards that goal. So
yes, that's such a good point. Because whenever you're going to start a new habit, it's like, well, you're replacing that time with something like, what were you doing before? Right? There was something that was happening with that time before we started that habit. So it's looking at where do you want to have habits in your life that are going to be helpful, that are going to help you become the better version of you, and what habits do you want to decrease your time spent on or stop doing altogether. And Habits are huge. I love just the study of habits and all of that, because it's like our lives, our success isn't built at the finish line. So if you go back to that marathon example, right, the success that we have with our lives, it doesn't happen at the finish line. It happens with all of those tiny little habits, what you say yes to and what you say no to, like hundreds of times a day, right? In those tiny little, like fraction of a second moments where you decide yes or no to this, yes or no to this. Like, it's in the little habits that our actual long-term success is built. So I think that habit stuff is so important.
Awesome. So can you tell us about your experience with counseling? What was that like?
Yes, I will. So my husband and I, when we got married, we had dreams, like many young couples, we had dreams of having a family. After we'd been married about 2 years, I found out I was pregnant. We were so excited. We told all our friends and family. We picked out a name for the baby, decorated the nursery, all that stuff. And I specifically remember turning to him one day in the car when we were driving and saying, "Golly, you know what? Life couldn't get any better." And I remember that so specifically because that was the last time that I really felt like life was going to be easy. Because not long after that, I lost the baby, and I lost another baby. And in spite of having a great medical team and a great support system, I ended up losing seven babies in a row. And after the third one, and this was before I was really into like mindset and studying like all of that, right? So after that third pregnancy loss, I remember talking to my doctor, and I told her, I said, I can't sleep. I said, I can go through, I was working as a physical therapist at the time. I said, I can go through my day and see my patients and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like when my head hits the pillow, I'm majorly grieving, and it's really hard, and I'm not sleeping well, and it's just intensifying the grief. And it was a really big struggle. So I said, I need something to help me sleep. And she said, you know what? She goes, I've never met anyone who's had like 3 or more pregnancy losses who I didn't send to counseling. And she goes, I really think that you should go talk to a counselor. And I was like, okay, and at that point, my mentality was kind of like, okay, like I want the medicine to sleep, but I'll kind of appease you, right? Like I'll go. And I thought, I'll go, but I'm not going to open up, because what is this person going to understand? They don't know my situation, right? And so I'm like, yeah, fine, I'll go. So I sit down there. I sit down in the chair in his office. And after the first sentence came out of my mouth, I like sobbed and sobbed. And it's like everything came out. I sat there for an hour, and I took a huge nap when I went home. And I was like, oh, like, okay, I apparently really needed that. And I ended up going, I believe it was 9 times. And I went, and he just gave me the tools. It was that time to talk to a professional who knew like the tools to use to help me mentally get through that and adjust to that situation, was so incredibly beneficial.
Wow. I thank you so much for sharing that experience, because oh my goodness, I mean, what stands out to me is your willingness to go. And I know that, you talked about, well, I my idea was, well, I'll go, like my butt will be in the chair, right? Like they can
Yeah,
put me in the chair. That's fine.
yeah,
But just kind of still having that idea of like, well, but I'm not going to share, or I don't have to share. And I actually, it sounds counterintuitive, but I love that. Because the going is the important part. Nobody expects you to go and share your entire life story. Nobody expects you to go, and the first time you're meeting this person, to make this strong connection with that person, and to feel completely understood and validated by this person, or to have the pain go away or stop after this session. And so I love what you did, because you said, yes, I will go, but I'm going to go cautiously. I'm going to go at my own pace.
yeah,
And that's so important. I think a lot of times people think, well, if I have the willingness to go sit in the chair, but I don't have maybe the willingness yet, or like the trust yet in that person to express what I'm feeling or thinking, that's okay. Because
Yeah.
the willingness to go and sit in the chair is the important part, right?
Yeah.
Like the benefiting from counseling is the end of the marathon. But the willingness to go sit in the chair is the looking up the date and putting it in your calendar. And
Yes.
so I love that. I love what you're modeling here for anybody who's thinking about counseling, is that it's just the going. Like
Well,
it.
it is. Yeah, it is. And like, as you're talking about that too, it reminded me of like when I, at that point in time, what I had thought was, and it was a guy, like I saw a counselor who was a male, and my thought in my head was, what does he know about me having trouble carrying a baby? Like, how can he possibly understand what I'm going through?
Mhm.
But the thing of the matter is, in order to receive good counseling, or in order for someone to be a great counselor, they don't have to have walked the exact same walk that someone else has. They know the tools. They can see your blind spots. They know how to help. It's just like Olympic athletes hire coaches, not that are retired Olympic athletes, but they're professionals that say, hey, I know how to teach you how to do this. I know the skill set for this. Like, I help you with this. And same with counseling. It's like, oh, that person doesn't have to have, they don't have to have walked my same exact path. Or even if they had a similar road, they don't have to have felt the same way about that road. But they're the trained professional who knows exactly how to help you, because they can see, the bird's eye view, and they know that they have the training and the skill set to be able to help you get the transformation that you want. So that, it was really, really helpful. I thought it was awesome.
I love that. What a great perspective. Like the this idea that, well, they're not going to understand because they haven't lived it. And that's so true. I mean, there's not a single experience that any of us have had where somebody else has had the exact same experience or experienced it in the exact same way. And so I think that is a barrier to counseling that we haven't ever talked about on this show, which is the barrier of thinking that the therapist would need to have lived what I've lived to understand or to help me. And I love what you're saying about Olympic athletes and hiring coaches. Like, of course, that coach cannot do a triple axel. Like that coach might be 50 years old, can't do a triple axel. Maybe they've never done one, but they know what it looks like when you do it the right way.
Yep.
Even if they can't do it, and they can see it from the outside where you can only look down and see your feet.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I love that example. And what a great model you are for that, in terms of, this was a therapist that was a different gender, like was just different from you, and he couldn't have experienced the same way that you have experienced, and you still were able to find benefit from that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really helpful. It was great.
Wow. So, can you tell us a little bit about some of the, so you said you talked to him for like about 10 sessions, and what kinds of things was he able to help you with? What kinds of things was he able, those tools, what kind of tools would you recommend that he was able to give you?
So part of it was just like really understanding like the trouble that I was having, like adjusting to this vision of what I had had for my life and how it was different than what I expected.
Yeah.
Um, and then like the whole grief cycle thing, we talked about that. Um, and then even my own dealings with feeling like I always had to show up as like the happy one, or had to, if people would say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, with these like sad eyes, and I would be like, oh, it's fine. Like I would kind of be like, I would get uncomfortable because they would be like not knowing what to say, so I would downplay it and act like it was okay, like just kind
Yeah.
of, different things related to that. And then I ended up really kind of looking too at it's almost like grieving and then redefining like what's the path now. Okay, life isn't, at that point in time, it's like, okay, it's not turning out the way that I had envisioned. So where do I want to go from here? Like, what's the next plan? What kind of goals am I going to set that are maybe different than the map that I had thought that I had? And how am I going to, build my life from here, kind of thing. So kind of a combination. And then a lot of bawling.
That's important. That's
a lot of tears and snot.
Yes, that's very, very important. It's why all of our offices are stocked with tissues. And I always say, as a company, we should be buying stocking Kleenex because we go through so much of it. Because that is so, so important. Being able to have that release too, being able to have a person that you can say things to and that you can feel things in front of without feeling guilty about how that person is going to receive what's happening, right? Like we've got all of these people around us, our family, our friends, we've got people who care about us in our lives.
Yeah.
That's a person we care about. If they care about us, we likely care about them. And so then the ability to really experience our feelings or to really express our feelings is limited with those people that are in our lives, because we're not just focusing on our processing with it. We're also thinking about like, oh my gosh, this affects them also, right? If I've experienced a loss, then likely the people in my family have experienced a loss at the same time, right? It's not the same loss, but they have experienced that too. And so then, can I process this out with them without being kind of hindered by like, well, how are they feeling about what I'm saying? And are they going to feel like I'm blaming them, or are they going to feel like I'm not supporting them because I'm having my own experience? And with a therapist, you just don't have to work, because like, who cares?
Right.
Who cares if
they're an unbiased like opinion that is not in your personal life, living in your house, and one of the things that we talked about too, that I talked about with him, is like the strain that it was putting on my marriage, because my husband was very, very supportive. He was very caring and everything like that. But I felt like, I knew he wanted to have kids, and I felt like I can't have kids. Like my body's not doing what I thought it should be able to do. So I was mad at my body. And I had told my husband, I said, you know what? This was multiple times that I told my husband, I said, I love you very much, but don't be surprised if one day you come home from work and I've just left. I'm like, I have to run away from this problem. Like that was where I was at, was like, you're awesome. I love you. Go marry someone who can have kids, because I apparently can't. And I have to get away from this pain and this, I can't deal with it. Like I was at that point where it was like a huge, like, I don't know if my marriage is going to last, not because of anything that he was doing to be unsupportive. He was being great, but because of so much internal pain that I was going through, that my reaction was like, I got to run. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of town. I got to, So that was one thing too, that when I went to counseling and talked about, was those kind of things. And that was a big deal. And we're still married and things are good. So that's good. Absolutely. But yeah, it was really challenging.
That's so, so important. I mean, anytime that there is a child loss in a family, the divorce rate just goes exponentially higher. And whether that child was born when that child was lost or not, that is a child loss in a marriage and in a family. And that is such an important thing to know, because when it happens to us, we don't know that. Like maybe we've read it or maybe we've heard it, but when it happens to us, it's not necessarily something that we go, oh, this is the reason why I might be having these marital, issues right now. And so being able to talk about that and being able to, normalize that a little bit and go, okay, I'm hearing that you and your husband have such a great connection, that you do love each other, you do care for each other, you are doing all the right things, but you're in this situation. And in this situation, marriages struggle. That is what happens. And just to be able to hear that and go, okay, it's not me. I'm not, right? Like I'm not reacting to this abnormally. I'm reacting to this very normally. My marriage is not reacting abnormally. It's not something wrong with my marriage. It's something wrong that's happened in our lives. And this is a normal reaction in a marriage as well. So just being able to have that validation from an external person who can say like, it's okay that you're having those feelings. Like, that also doesn't make you a bad wife. The fact that you're having feelings or thoughts of leaving your husband and, getting out of town, it doesn't mean it's anything against him. It just means that this situation is completely overwhelming, and everything about your house, your husband, right? Like your plans and thoughts that you've had for the future, everything around you is a trigger. And when we
Yeah,
have trauma like that, it makes sense that we would want to avoid those triggers. They're painful. Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, and when you look at it too, so when we're trying to have a baby, going through different infertility treatments, then you're on different medications for like hormone levels and stuff. So you're just kind of out of sorts to begin with, and the doctor appointments end up really being very much consuming your life. So I think there's that on top of it, and then yeah, all the things that come along with grieving. And yeah, when something happens in life, no matter what it is, when something happens in life, when it's like a big event and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't exactly how I pictured my life going right now. It's hard. It's hard, and that's something that I saw a lot of times, like in the rehab process with patients too, was like, there'd be a massive, like unexpected, like lifetime illness, or, a significant injury or a stroke or whatever it was, where it was like, okay, I got to figure out how to adapt to this new normal and figure out what to do here and deal with this thing that I never wanted or expected. But now looking ahead and kind of making a new path, and how am I going to deal with that? So yeah, there's a lot that goes into those types of things.
This idea that you're talking about in terms of like identity. I think when a life event happens like this, we have a major loss like that, or in the case of physical therapy, when somebody loses the use of their shoulder, or loses the use of their legs, it changes our identity in a
Yeah,
very fast way. And so with miscarriage and with infertility, I can speak personally that it changes my idea of who I am. I go
yeah,
into this with all of these dreams and all of these plans, and then I go, okay, yeah, when I start out of it, I go, okay, well, this is what a woman is. This is what a mom is. This is what a marriage is. This is what a family is and a household is. And then when infertility starts to come in, you go, what does that mean about who I am now?
yep,
Like, as a woman and as a mom and as, right, like, and as a wife, right? What does this mean about all of those things? And it's like, you know, a lot of our security, a lot of our emotional security comes from knowing who we are, right? And being able to go, okay, but this is who I am at my core, right? No matter what is happening around me. And events like this, traumas like this, miscarriages, infertility, loss of parents, loss of children, right? Like these events that happen in our life, they change our identities.
yeah,
You go from being an expectant mom to not being an expectant mom. Like, those are completely different identities. And especially in the case of infant loss or miscarriage, your identity is already just shifted. So if there's a change in identity, and then there's a sudden change back, and
yeah,
that is so jarring to our emotional state, and it's so traumatic to our emotional state. And
yes,
so, yeah, I love that you were able to kind of identify those things of like, okay, but I'm still, these are the parts that are still me. I still do have an identity. And what am I doing going forward?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, as you're talking about that too, like that little sudden changes in identity, and that's the hard thing with those like pregnancy losses or infertility types things, is it can be every month that there's this extreme hope followed by this extreme grief. Like it's this never ending roller coaster of ups and downs and hope and sadness, and like it's crazy. There's this huge emotional side that I really feel like is not talked about near enough, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think in recent years, people are kind of bringing light more to the fact that a lot of people have pregnancy losses, but there's this huge emotional toll that it takes that is really under talked about, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And with infertility or with infant loss or with miscarriage, it's a type of grief that gets blocked typically, because when you lose a sibling, when you lose a parent, there is a process for that. There is support for that all around you. People acknowledge that. You get time off of work for that, right? You go do a ceremony for that. There are things to be done, and processes to go through, and people generally understand, okay, yes, you just lost, your sister, you just lost whoever. And with infant loss, there is a little bit more of that, right? You still have the ceremonies, but with infertility and with miscarriage, there are not those established ceremonies, or rituals to go through to be able to process out that grief. And so what ends up happening is it just gets stuck with us, because if we don't have other people that we can talk to about it, or if we don't have other people who understand that this is a major loss, this is a loss in the same line and of the same magnitude as losing a 5-year-old child, right? It is the same. And I think that sometimes people don't understand that it's the same, right? If you say, well, my 5-year-old passed, right? I lost my 5-year-old. That gets, I think, a different reaction in our, and a different level of support in our society than if we say I had a miscarriage.
I think part of it is when there's someone that someone can see, it's very tangible to everybody, right? Like, oh, I can see that person. I had a relationship with that person also, and you lost them from your life, and they were my friend or my colleague, and like there's like a tangible thing that they can see that is now missing. Where when it comes to like the infertility and like pregnancy loss type of stuff, it's something that it's like only you can feel, right? Or like maybe you could feel the baby kicking, or you could feel the hormone changes, or you could see your body changing, or you saw that heartbeat and that flicker on the ultrasound. Like there's that. So it's like it's very, very tangible and real to you, because the instant you found out like, hey, I'm gonna have a baby, in your mind you're like, sweet, I'm a mom, and you're dreaming of years and years and years in the future, and then all of a sudden that's gone, but it was only tangible to you. So it's like it's just different, and I don't know. I mean, there's so many different ways people grieve and so many hard things, and none of them are fun. But yeah, that's just one thing that I think is like, it's kind of like a unique thing, because it's like you're the only person who has actually experienced this. So I think it's hard for other people then to really be there for you, because they haven't gone through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense. And so I love that, these conversations they do seem to be happening more frequently, and that people are sharing more often, their stories with pregnancy loss, and with infertility, because it can feel so isolating. It can just feel so like I'm the only person, and I'm the only, and I'm going through this alone. And it is wonderful that more people are sharing. So we appreciate you sharing your story, with us here. Absolutely. Yeah. So, if if you were talking to somebody who might be on the fence about counseling, and maybe if it's somebody who has experienced infertility or has experienced a pregnancy loss, what suggestion might you give them if they're on the fence about counseling?
I would say get your butt in the seat. No, I would say I think you'd be surprised at how much it can help, and how the counselors have the tools to help you with your specific situation, and also how much it helps just to have that person to vent to, who's an outside source, who doesn't know you well, who you feel like you can, once you get to know them, or whenever it feels right for you, when you feel like you really can, talk or vent to someone who's just an unbiased person who, it's okay. Like, it's okay to get whatever feelings out. And yeah, I would say give it a shot, because it can be so, so helpful. And the thing about it is, when, you know, our thoughts and what's going on mentally in our heads affects everything in our lives. It affects your relationships. It affects how you show up for your, you know, health and wellness. It affects how you sleep. It affects how you do your work. It affects how productive you are. It affects how big you dream. It affects everything. So if you can work on that and mentally feeling better, or mentally, maybe you're feeling pretty decent mentally, but you want to feel even better, right? So you can really rise and be the best version of you in the mornings. If you can go to counseling and you can work on those different things, it can be really, really life-changing for all aspects of life.
Awesome. That's really, really good advice. Get your butt in the seat. I love that. Even if you're like mentally dragging yourself there, if the butt's in the seat, you're doing it. Like you're on the right track. I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so how can people find Mornings That Matter? If they want to get signed up, where do they go? How do they find you?
So if they go to www.morningsthatmatter.net, they can go there and they can sign up. I have a free 5-day challenge. So I teach you the Mornings That Matter, the 10-minute research-based morning mindset routine to start each day feeling unstoppable. And you get like 5 days of free audios and you learn this morning routine. So by the end of the week, you know it by heart. Otherwise, if they have any specific questions for me, my website is www.kerrypetsinger.com. They can go there and send me a message if they have any questions.
Perfect. Kerry Petsinger, KerryPetsinger, as though you sing to Pets, Petsinger. So KerryPetsinger.com. Perfect. If you are in Iowa and you are interested in getting signed up for services, you can do therapy through the computer, you can do therapy over the phone, or you can do therapy in one of our 7 office locations. You can also do in-home behavioral health intervention for kids is available in person, in home, and in school.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central Time. So save up that laundry, do that while you listen to us, and let us help you remember to call your counselor on Monday and get set up for that week.
Sounds good. So if you have questions for us about counseling in general, or if you want to share your story, send us a message on Facebook Messenger. You can send that to us at You Need a Counselor Podcast, or you can DM us on Instagram at You Need a Counselor. Also, if you've got questions for Kerry about her story, and if you're inspired by what she has shared on this podcast, send us a message there for Kerry, because we'd love to have Kerry back on the show and we can have her answer those questions for you on the podcast.
I'm Kerry Petsinger and I need a counselor.
Yes. So do we.
So I'm Chrissa Brown.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.